Hey everybody, Don here, your pop culture boy, aka your pop culture grandpapa. We are gathered here today to talk about The Weeknd, how he's stuck on repeat musically for a couple of years now. Something is not right with his career of late. He seems lost or his sound is not focused when it comes to this rollout for his upcoming studio album. Currently, he's having a hard time connecting with the general public, both musically and symbolically, which is not synonymous with The Weeknd, but this might be his new trend. Usually he captivates the public almost instantly at the start of his album tracks, but as of late, well, more specifically since Dawn FM, released in 2022, that instant rush and excitement isn't as widespread compared to his prior albums. Now, before we dig into the meat and potatoes, I want to start off by saying for the record that The Weeknd, the king of high notes, the king of toxicity, and one of the best male vocalists, is one of my favorite artists of all time. Now, that being said, unlike some of y'all, yeah, you wearing The Weeknd's merch watching, I'm not biased, or I'll try my very best to separate my bias from reality when talking about my faves. And I'm making this declaration of independence because I know his stans are not gonna like some of the things I say in this video and try to fuck me up in the comments. But this is not my first rodeo, so I'm gonna keep it real. No stan army can intimidate me. So, for this video, let's talk about The Weeknd. In this video, I'll talk about how he's stuck in his career, the turning point in his career, i.e. when things started to go downhill. Will he flop? And is his image now tired? I am Don, your pop culture boy. Let's get into it.
That's catastrophic.
The Weeknd, we all know him, sings like an angel. Currently, he's the second artist with the most monthly listeners on Spotify. Today, Homeboy stands as one of the biggest artists on the planet, but it wasn't always like this for the now hit maker. The Weeknd was born in Toronto, Canada, to Ethiopian immigrants in 1990, where he grew up in poverty. He lived in the district of Scarborough, in a small flat he shared with his mother and grandmother. Scarborough was not an exciting place for The Weeknd. This atmosphere of boredom and stillness constantly reminded The Weeknd, whose birth name is Abel Tesfaye, that he needed to leave that setting if he wanted to make it big. And as we all know, he eventually did. This should come to no surprise, but The Weeknd was too cool for school, and his mind was always focused on his music, prompting him to drop out of high school at the age of 17 in order to pursue a music career. He also persuaded one of his friends, Lamar Taylor, who is now his creative director, to drop out as well. Obviously, it paid off in the end for Abel and his flan, but I don't care. If Lamar Taylor was my son and he was persuaded to leave school, Abel, catch me outside. I'm coming for you, nigga. Now, after they dropped out of high school, The Weeknd and his flan were on some I want to do hood rat shit with my flan type shit. One day they pulled up in a van at Tesfaye's home. Tesfaye went to his room, grabbed his mattress, grabbed it out of the house, and threw it in. His mother watched him grimly. The worst look anyone could ever have, he recalls. She looked at me like she had failed, says this 2015 New York Times Magazine interview with the artist. So yeah, they got in, they packed up Abel's mattress, threw it in the van, and drove into the sunset. What happened next? Well, along with another friend, they rented a one-bedroom apartment in an area populated with crackheads and students. They stole shit, got into fights, and got high while living off of welfare checks. The Weeknd hated not being high and would do whatever he could to never come down. It's this state of perpetual euphoria The Weeknd would create dystopian music in. Initially, no one knew who The Weeknd was, and he was confused for being a band. In 2011, The Weeknd dropped 3 mixtapes for free, which led to him being discovered by Drake's team later that year. And just like Drake, there was a bidding war to sign the Canadian singer. Oh, almost forgot. While The Weeknd was working with Drake, The Weeknd contributed and was credited as a co-writer on several tracks on Drake's 2011 album, Take Care. The following year, The Weeknd signed a deal with Republic Records, where his own XO became a sub-label. In November, he reworked and remastered his first 3 mixtape as a compilation project, titled Trilogy. This was around the early come-ups of Miguel, Frank Ocean, and FKA Twigs. Along with The Weeknd, they were leading the wave of experimental and dark R&B in the early 2010s. And it was this period, 2012, when I first discovered The Weeknd through the track Wicked Games. The Weeknd's trilogy was a hit with critics and fans. It was a commercial success. But when it came time for his debut studio album, 2013's Kissland, the album underperformed despite debuting at number 2, selling 90K in the first week, which isn't bad. It's not a bad number for a debut, but The Weeknd was expecting to sell a lot more. Kissland is by no means a bad album, but it spoke mainly to the singer's core niche audience at the time. It didn't resonate with the general public, but that unfamiliarity and uncertainty in regards to GP's acquaintance with The Weeknd was about to change. The next motive was to be seen as a superstar, surpassing the mainstream status. This was accomplished by releasing features with artists that had already large and established followings. In 2014, he was placed on the following remix for the song Urna by Ty Dolla $ign, Wiz Khalifa, and DJ Mustard. He was recruited for Ariana Grande's Love Me Harder. Remember that song? They were so cute. And let's not forget the blockbuster Earned It, which was included on the soundtrack for the freaky version of Twilight, 50 Shades of Grey. And by 2015, when it came time for the release of Abel's second studio album, Beauty Behind the Madness, everyone knew who The Weeknd was. Beauty Behind the Madness is the album that really set The Weeknd up to being the artist that we all know today. It set the tone that he was a hit maker, producing 2 #1 singles, The Hills and I Can't Feel My Face. After the release of Beauty Behind the Madness, The Weeknd became a household name, as whatever project he'd put out performed extremely well. Even his EP, titled My Dear Melancholy, released in 2018, shattered the expectations of what an EP normally sells, with first week sales of 169,000 equivalent units, and debuting at #1 in the United States. In my opinion, things started to go downhill for the artist in 2022. With the release of his 5th studio project, Dawn FM, one of his most ambitious projects. Now, since 2015's Beauty Behind the Madness, The Weeknd's albums have all debuted at #1, but with Dawn FM, that did not happen. The project debuted at #2, and its first week numbers were lower than usual, with 148,000 sold in its first week. And that might not be a big deal for some people, and might be great news for some artists. But by that time, The Weeknd was always slated to debut with over 300K. In comparison to his prior albums since his second album. Over time, his albums went multi-platinum. Meanwhile, as of today, Dawn FM hasn't, and we are now approaching 2025. And I'm not saying the album is bad, not at all. It's actually really good. But a lot of people did not want that album. Dawn FM is extremely ambitious, which did impress industry critics. But sometimes when you go too artsy, you might end up losing the people on a whole. The album deals with death and purgatory, which is on par with The Weeknd's image, but it didn't work to his advantage that time around. He continued with the retro sound from the prior album, After Hours, which was a bit redundant on Dawn FM. Most people were expecting a new sound, especially coming off the high success of After Hours. And this was also around COVID, when people did not want to deal with those themes. Also, the album doesn't have the replay value like his previous albums did. After Hours made you want to dance and fantasize about being a badass motherfucker that pop pills and not giving a shit, while Dawn FM reminded you that it was all a dream during lockdown.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
And if you're saying, well, After Hours also came out, at the start of the pandemic and was very successful, so that's not a factor. Well, my counter to that is After Hours was great escapism. It was something people could look forward to. It was a fantasy that was alluring, but Dawn FM wasn't. Now, let's talk about The Weeknd's image for a bit. Since The Weeknd starred in the HBO series The Idol, he hasn't been the same since, and his image has been in shambles. Let me explain. And this is just a theory, by the way. After starring in The Idol, people finally feel like they know who The Weeknd is, and they are not impressed. The Weeknd has always maintained this purposeful, mysterious image. He released some of his first set of songs on YouTube, and no one knew how he looked like. At the start of his career and even today, he hardly does interviews, hardly speaks publicly, and when he does, he has this low tone that aids in curiosity from the public. And when you are as mysterious as The Weeknd, it is very easy for others to assume who you are. And hey, that can aid in one's favor. And it did work for The Weeknd. But when he did The Idol, where he played Tedros, who is manipulative, a conniving imbecile that preys on people's weakness, for the record, I like The Idol. I think it's great and a realistic picture of what happens in the music industry and even in just, being in friend groups. And that's besides the point. But yeah, people hated the series along with The Weeknd's performance in the show. Some thought it was corny and cringe, which doesn't align with The Weeknd's mysterious, cool image. The Idol made people side-eye him. It made people feel like they knew who he is. A pervy weirdo. Granted, it's just a show and it shouldn't be taken into consideration as he is playing a character. But when no one knows who you are and then you play a role like that, people are going to assume that's who you are in real life to an extent. Now, I don't know why people were shocked he played that character, as his music is very toxic and druggy and fucked up. So for me personally, it's just a character and his music is just music, but I wasn't shocked by the role because his music is very similar to that role. Anyway, again, I like The Idol. However, I think a real actor should have played this part instead. With the controversy surrounding the series and terms like rape, fantasy being attached to it, I think only an actor can move past those controversies attached to projects they've starred in, because they're actors. They have to work and acting is what they do. But for an artist like a singer, it's a lot harder to shake that rhetoric due to the fact that people just take musicians way too literal and way too serious. In response to the negative feedback, The Weeknd got riled up on the internet and started responding to negative feedback, something he hardly does. Come to think of it, I don't think I've ever seen him riled up at all. This also poked holes in his careless, unbothered persona as well. So yeah, with the release of Dawn FM and The Idol, his image is just not aligned with what he sold us initially. And now the atmosphere that surrounds him with this upcoming project gearing up to be released in 2025 seems more stifled and conscious, not as carefree, if that makes sense. And now he's changing his name on social media, reverting to his government name, doing interviews saying he might kill off the Weeknd character. So you've been playing a character all along? Interesting. I don't know. I might be reaching. Let me know. There is nothing wrong with being mysterious, but for The Weeknd, is he too mysterious? Or is his music too serious? And maybe it doesn't align with the times. I feel like in this climate that we are in right now, with music being quote unquote dead or too dystopian, as of late, it seems like artists are listening to us and are slowly changing the tempo. And right now, I'm seeing artists making more of an effort to make better music or to challenge themselves more or making music that is just fun again. I think The Weeknd is kind of outdated or is getting tired with his mystery as we are in the climate of honesty and telling the truth. And when you look at that, The Weeknd's whole image conflicts with that. And I think he's being seen as pretentious. When you are so cool, mysterious, and live in your own world, don't look at me. Today's audience will see you as a pretentious prick and fake deep. Again, I know he's successful and, he sold out this and sold out that. I know. I don't give a fuck. That's not what the video is about. What I'm saying is he's not connecting with the audience like he used to. And I'm also not saying you cannot be mysterious. I'm not saying that either. It's just that his mysteriousness, there's an issue with it at this moment when it comes to him connecting with the audience today. Sometimes when you get too artistic, and The Weeknd has always been artistic, that's one of his strong suits, but you have to find a balance as a major artist, which is what he is and what he wants to continue to be. It's obvious he cares. Sometimes when you're too artistic and too mysterious and too deep, you might end up chasing the hose away if you don't find that balance. As I mentioned earlier in the video, The Weeknd has been gearing up to release his 6th studio effort since the fall of this year. Hurry Up Tomorrow, the name of his upcoming album, is set to be released in January next year. Hurry Up Tomorrow will be the final installment in a trilogy that includes the previous albums, After Hours and Dawn FM. Now, the singles released so far aren't performing like his previous singles, and I'm comparing these new singles with the singles between Beauty Behind the Madness and After Hours. If you look back at those albums, from Beauty Behind the Madness to After Hours, the singles were colossal, like extremely impactful and era-defining. From The Hills to I Can't Feel My Face off of Beauty Behind the Madness, Starboy and I Feel It Coming off of his Starboy album. And we also have Blinding Lights, Heartless, and Save Your Tears for Another Day. Just super iconic and memorable singles. But since Dawn FM, it's been a snooze fest in comparison, and the rollout for Hurry Up Tomorrow is not remarkable either. Dancing in the Flames, the lead single, debuted at number 14 on the Hot 100, which isn't bad at all. And the song is perfect in my opinion, but the track has been falling on the charts since its debut back in September. The second single, Timeless, fared much better in its debut, debuting at number 3, but then it fell out of the top 10 the following week. And the third single, with Anitta, a Brazilian track, someone please correct me on the genre, and I think that debuted at number 77. So what have we learned so far? The first track was on par with the 80s sound of After Hours on Dawn FM, but that song, Dancing in the Flames, isn't performing as they expected. So they switched gears to a more current sound, the heavy trap vibes on Timeless, and included Playboi Carti for relevance, but that fell out of the top 10 the following week. And now the third single is Latin inspired. Bruh, some not right. The Weeknd is stuck, and not in a good way, like Bruno Mars, in terms of overusing certain sounds or music aesthetics. That also makes his sound redundant as well. Bruno has been on this soul funk vibe since 2016, although personally I can tolerate Bruno's redundancy a lot more, despite his sound being a bit tired as well. Maybe it's because Bruno Mars is a better singer than The Weeknd, and I know some of you are about to say, no, Bruno is not better. Yes, he is. The Weeknd is more of a stylistic singer, like a Michael Jackson or a Rihanna. Unique sounds that make them stand out, but not traditional foundation type singing. But back on topic, I do see Bruno Mars changing it up recently though, with the 80s rock vibes on the duet with Gaga and on the Rose pop punk track APT. Listen, I don't know what the fuck they are saying, but I like that song. Autobots, roll out. And yes, I know some of you are probably saying, well, The Weeknd can be redundant at this moment with this upcoming album, seeing that the 3 singles are all, 3 different genres. But to me, it seems like a last-minute decision, like they're trying to see what sticks. Remember, this is supposed to be a trilogy. The first 2 albums had the same 80s vibes, and when he came out with the lead single, it also had 80s vibes, but that didn't perform. So then they change and switch gears and release the Playboi Carti feature track. And then the Latin track. It's just all confusing. Seems like they're panicking at this moment, in my opinion. And it's not just his sound where The Weeknd is redundant, it's also in his image. Everything about him is kind of redundant, to be honest. The Weeknd's reputation is on the line right now, and it's in his best interest that Hurry Up Tomorrow performs better than Dawn FM. And with these recent singles not dominating the charts, it's not a good look for him. I know I said earlier that I don't care about his albums doing well or not, but that's not entirely true, as he is one of my favorite artists, and I don't want my favorite artist to flop. When I said I don't care, I meant it in a realistic way, meaning my life goes on, the bills are still coming, and I have to pay them. I'm not going to cry about it. It's apparent he's trying to figure out how to evolve. His image and sound doesn't fit in this current music climate of authenticity. He's having a hard time adapting. Now, will Hurry Up Tomorrow flop? Well, with an accompanying psychological film attached that stars Jenna Ortega and TikToker Charlie D'Amelio, it's safe to say his team is doing everything in their power to ensure that doesn't happen. What do you think? I'm Don, your pop culture boy, and I will see you in the next one.